photos, please, sir. several hundred people standing outside, so we ask that you keep your visit rather brief as you pass by the casket. Thank you very much for visiting.
We can. And say with me, I'm not sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for the interruption. We have several hundred people standing outside, so we ask that you keep your visit very brief as you pass by the casket. Thank you for your cooperation.
mourning his legacy for the next 5 days in 3 cities, and it begins today in the Capitol Rotunda right there, where as of 2 o'clock, that is when the public is allowed to pay their respects and visit the state capitol in the Rotunda to say their final goodbyes to our beloved senator.
It is a final farewell for the senator known as the Maverick. He was transported to the downtown area earlier this morning in a beautiful procession as McCain's body was taken into the Capitol Rotunda. You see it there. A rare moment for a dignitary to lie in state at the state capitol, only the 3rd time in modern history here in Arizona. All 7 of his children were there attending, also his wife Cindy. And in the front row, you saw Jack and Jimmy, 2 members of the military as well, paying their respects. His daughter Megan also very emotional throughout the morning that we saw. And now, as you see, members of the public are having the chance to walk through and experience history.
That's right. This is truly something that we may never see again in our lifetime. They had just switched out the guard, and as you can see, members of the public right now finally paying their respects. This is video that happened earlier as Mr. McCain's body was driven in that hearse right there from the mortuary and made his way down all the way to the state capitol. Obviously, people lining up on the sides of the road. A very somber, very sad moment.
Yeah, we were out there in front of the Capitol. You had veterans of the Vietnam War, very poignant. They were saluting him. You had several members of the Navy who were there. You know, John McCain is someone who was born into the Navy, served his country, was tortured for wearing the uniform. And then you see right now the procession as they started to take his body into the Capitol. Some touching words from 2 special dignitaries. You had former Senator John Kyle and then Governor Doug Ducey. John Kyle telling that small little audience there and the broader audience watching on TV that John McCain believed in the idea of America. He said he fell in love with his country while in another country's prison. And he touched on 2 or 3 of Senator McCain's, I guess, most important passions in politics. The idea that America's institutions must be preserved. The idea that America must have a moral standing and continue to have one around the world. And he said no one understood better how and when to apply power in the world as John McCain did. Governor Ducey also comparing him to the Grand Canyon, saying it's almost synonymous with Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a fabric, a piece of Arizona right here. As you can see, the Arizona National Guard casket team carrying the casket to the Capitol Rotunda, and right behind that casket, a very somber, a very sad Cindy McCain, followed by her family. Again, John McCain survived by his 7 children, Megan, Jimmy, Jack, Bridget, Andy, Doug, and Sydney. And I have to say, seeing this moment right here, that was one of several very poignant moments of her saying goodbye to the man that she loved and married for over 30+ years. It was so heartbreaking, so touching. And then, as you can see later on, the rest of his children paying their respects and saying goodbye to their father. And this one really tug at your heartstrings right here. Megan McCain, so understandably emotional, saying, "I love you." You could read those words coming out of her mouth, and just trying so hard to be strong. Also, his daughter Bridget right there saying goodbye, and then behind Bridget, you saw the rest of his children from his first marriage. Sydney, Andy, and Doug saying their final goodbyes. It was just so heartbreaking to see. And we should also say that on a day that we are celebrating his life and his legacy and saying goodbye, today was also his 82nd birthday. So truly, this whole funeral service, this whole memorial service was thoughtfully planned out, right down to the detail, right down to the first day of 5 days of memorial services across 3 cities. And we have live team coverage starting at the state capitol, where our very own Mark Curtis brings us more of what we can see out there. And Mark, I understand that they actually let some members of the public go in a little bit earlier to pay their respects.
They did, Tram. First of all, keep in mind, it's about 104, 105 degrees out here today, maybe warmer. And so, if nothing else, not what he did in life, not what he accomplished in Congress, but how he died with honor and grace and dignity tells you anything, these people today standing out here in long lines in the heat that can be dangerous, I think is a testament to what this man accomplished. You know, it's sort of the age-old question. What is the measure of a man? Is it how that man lived or that woman lived and what they accomplished over the course of a lifetime? Or is it how they're remembered and how they're revered in death? And I think these crowds today give you that answer. There's an old expression that we all spend our entire life writing our own epitaph. Will people remember us fondly for the good things that we did? Or will they forget us because we didn't make an impact? And in the case of John Sidney McCain, I think everyone would agree that he accomplished more in his lifetime than most of us can ever hope to accomplish. Born into Navy royalty, not only his father but also his grandfather, both ascending to the lofty heights of being Navy admirals. It was never a doubt that John McCain would follow in their footsteps, but in a story that's been well chronicled, he struggled when he got to the Naval Academy, but his tenacity to not flunk out, he finished 5th from the bottom, but his tenacity while there, and never let it be said that he didn't have a good time, sort of set the tone for the rest of his life. He became a Navy fighter pilot, but not a great one, but he still volunteered for combat missions. He became a prisoner of war, and with that same dogged tenacity, was able to withstand 5.5 years in the infamous Hanoi Hilton while being tortured and having his arm broken over and over again. And when his captors realized who he was, what his pedigree was, and what he would be worth, he refused to be let out early because there had been some of his fellow prisoners who had been there longer before. And then, of course, we know his storied career as a politician, all of it while serving the state of Arizona, first as a congressman and then on to over 3 decades in the U.S. Senate, where he served notably, had a very interesting relationship with the media. But one of his last statements, and one of the things that I'll always appreciate as a member of the media, he said over and over again in these tempestuous times when there are many who are critical of the media and the role the media plays in an open and free press, John McCain doggedly said, even to those who criticized him, we must have a free press in America. It's what makes us unique, and it's what makes us great. Let's get a sense of the crowds now and go out to our team coverage, beginning with Team 12's Bianca Bono. Bianca?
Hey, Mark. Yeah, what incredible images we're seeing down here closer to the rotunda. We want to give you a look at the lines from the ground here. If my photographer Carlos can show you, the line wraps all the way.
Picture's hot.
I've talked to people that are not only Arizonans, but have driven here from elsewhere to be here today. They said it was important for them. And in fact, one of those people is Fernando. He's joining me right now. He drove here 5 hours this morning from California. Fernando, thanks so much for waiting. Sorry to keep you out here in this heat a little bit longer. But why was it so important for you to be out here today?
Well, first of all, I'm a Democrat, and of course, John was a Republican. But I think John kind of epitomized for me what a statesman is truly all about, and he certainly was that. He was a statesman, he was a gentleman, a veteran, and we felt that, my wife and my youngest child, we felt it was important for us to be here to show our respects to him.
You know, it's so refreshing looking back and reflecting on his life, how he chose to put party lines aside so many times. How refreshing was that for you to see in a day where it seems like the country is so divided between Republicans and Democrats? I think the one act that he performed regarding the ACA, that day that he took that vote, and he stood up for the people of Arizona and the nation when he said, when he gave a thumbs down on the ACA ruling. I think that really solidified the idea that
you have to be concerned about the people, not so much the politics. And he certainly, like I say, he did that. He impressed me so much at that day that he did that.
So many people today have pointed to that moment as being one that stuck out to them as well. Did you ever have a chance to encounter him? I know so many people, even though he was such a busy person, so many people have these personal memories. Do you have any of those yourself?
No, unfortunately, I never did that. I lived here in Arizona back in the early 1970s. Moved to California and never had a chance to actually meet him, but certainly did follow him. He was a statesman to be followed, to watch, and he was a maverick. And he for us as a Democrat, he impressed me that he would cross party lines if it meant saving his people, and I thought that was great. Well,
Fernando, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your service. We want to give you an opportunity to go inside there and pay your respects, but we appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
As we continue to kind of navigate this line down here, so many people sharing stories just like Fernando. We've seen Republicans, we've seen Democrats, people of all ages, the elderly, we've seen young children here, families feeling like it was important to bring out the entire family to really say goodbye to a man that was, again, so beloved by so many. It's been really incredible hearing the personal stories. We're going to continue to do that and bring you those stories as we continue to monitor this line. We've been reporting it throughout the day, but if you do want to come down here, initially they said they were going to close this off at 8 o'clock. Now they're saying they're going to keep this open as long as there are people in line. So plenty of opportunity for you to come down here as well and say goodbye to Senator McCain.
All right, Bianca, thanks. I can't help but think what a uniquely American moment this is, as people on a blazingly hot Arizona day in the middle of the afternoon come not only from across our state, but from across our country. We're going to introduce you to someone who drove here from California just to pay his respects in just a second. But first, I want to go to Team 12's Jeremy Hohola, who's also out there talking to the people who have come to pay their final respects to this great man. Jeremy?
Yeah, that's right, Mark. If I may make an observation here, I've been out here for the past half hour now, and when I'm looking at the faces of the crowds here, you see different people from different backgrounds, different shades of skin. You see different people from different worlds, and that is a testament to our country, the United States of America. It's also to the testament of John McCain, a man who reached out to so many people and touched so many people. I'd like to talk to two gentlemen here. Mr. Olivas, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Espinosa, thank you for your service. You gentlemen have been waiting in line here for how long now?
It's about 45 minutes.
45 minutes, yeah.
So it went bad.
Yeah, what brings you out here today, Mr. Olivas?
Well, outside of the great gentleman that we're going to pay our respects to, he was one of my brothers. He's joined the service, so he wore the uniform. So we all become brothers. I was born and raised here in Phoenix, so the idea is that I'm a native, and I'm proud to say that it's also my brother.
Yeah, very touching.
Well,
What do you hope to take away from the sights and the scene inside the Capitol today?
Well, one of the things that I'll take away is knowing that he's resting in peace, and with my other brothers, our real heroes that are buried, he's going to join them. So that's the bottom line.
And I'm sure today, on a day like this, you're feeling a kinship with McCain because you served in Vietnam.
Definitely. As you put on the uniform, like everything else, you all become one. No such thing as a black, white, orange, or yellow. It's all one.
Yeah.
And I'm proud.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Olivas. Mr. Espinosa, you've been waiting here with your pal. How you feeling today about being here?
How do I feel being here? I'm a little proud. Well, I'm proud because he was our senator, and like Bobby, I was born and raised here in Phoenix, and he was a veteran, and all veterans stick together, one way or the other, good or bad. We all stick together. So I'm honored to be here.
How much of an impact from your perspective and through your lens do you think McCain had on you personally as a person?
I was kind of like McCain. I think on my own, and I say what I want to say whenever I want to. If people don't like it, it's the way it is. And more or less, we're kind of the same. And and I'm proud to be here today.
Great.
To say goodbye to you.
Your pal over here is joking about you over here. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service. I appreciate. Mark, there's a viewer there saying hi to you. But I think, you know, when you hear different anecdotal stories like that, you really get a sense of how much of an impact McCain had on the consciousness of Arizona and on the hearts of the people who are here in line today. I said earlier this morning while I was talking here this morning when the procession pulled up, when you hear these different stories from people, the stories are not about politics. The stories are not about, political differences. It's really anecdotal stories of people when they encountered McCain, they had these very human stories that were marked with levity and kind of surprise humor, and that was really McCain. McCain was a man who was known to have a sense of humor, and you got to wonder if he were here today, standing among the people, what he would say. And I think someone remarked this morning, I think it was Bram, that said he would probably make some sort of joke. So, I mean, I think when we look at this line, and we see people standing under the hot Phoenix sun. Like you said, it's 104 degrees, 105 degrees. People are willing to stand here and stay here and, for their hero. So it's a real testament, Mark.
All right, Jeremy, thanks. I'm sure you remember and all of our viewers remember that incredible speech that the late Senator McCain made when he returned to the Senate after being diagnosed. And I just want to read you a quote before we go to our next guest. He said, "What greater cause could we hope to serve than helping keep America the strong, aspiring, inspirational beacon of liberty and defender of the dignity of all human beings and their right to freedom and equal justice?" John McCain understood America's place in the world, on the world stage. And when you have someone whose presence is as large and whose career is as varied as John McCain, he isn't just ours. We have to share him with the world, and he is particularly revered in the Vietnamese community. Imagine being held prisoner for 5.5 years and then once you became a politician, going back and healing some of those old wounds. Derek Wynn is here. He drove all the way here from California to pay his respects. He came with his family. He's been in line, putting up with our heat, certainly not like California, right, Derek?
Correct.
To pay his respects along with the rest of his friends and family. And I'm wondering, all of these years later, why Senator McCain's name still is so revered within the Vietnamese community.
First of all, as a naval aviator, Lieutenant Commander McCain fought alongside with the South Vietnamese soldiers and people to uphold what we believe righteous and just. As a legislator, Senator McCain helped draft a bill which became law and which became known as the McCain Amendment to a law that allowed the unification, the adult unmarried children of former political detainees in Vietnam to migrate to the U.S. with their families. Without that amendment, not too many people could come. Of course, the adult children could not have come, and without the adult children, the family would not have come
and
either.
That's part of your story, because you're a first-generation refugee.
I wasn't under that program, but a lot of my friends are. And in our group today, to come to pay our respect to the late senator, there are about 100 of us from Orange County, Westminster, California, which is the largest Vietnamese concentration outside of Vietnam. A lot of people owed their lives, their achievements to Senator McCain. There's an Asian proverb that when a tiger dies, it leaves behind its hide. When a person dies, he leaves behind his legacy. And Senator McCain's legacy probably covers 10 lifetimes. He did a lot, not just for America, but for the world itself. And through his actions, through his dignity, he embodies what America is about. We fight for freedom, for independence, for righteousness, but at the same time, we exhibit compassion. And through unity, we will become a great people and a great country.
Derek, I mentioned a second ago that as much as we love Senator McCain here in Arizona for all he did for our state, we have to share him with the rest of the country and the rest of the world. And I think when you look at this line today, people not only like yourself who've driven here from somewhere else, from a far distance to pay their respects, but waiting out here in the heat just to get a chance to pay your respects at his flag-draped coffin. That says so much, and at least speaking for myself, I would like to think that there would be 1/100th of the amount of emotion that we're seeing today when I pass one day.
Correct. When we heard of the funeral arrangement back in Little Saigon, California, we announced it through Little Saigon Radio, which is a prominent news outlet in the community, that we secured 2 sponsor buses to take people here. Within 15 minutes, 100 people signed up. Well, at the last minute, some people dropped out because of the heat and so on and so forth. But about 100 people of us are here. 100, that's a lot. And we got there at 5 o'clock to take a 6-hour bus drive. Some people could not sleep all night. Some people got up at 2 o'clock. We were so excited, and we feel so touched and so honored to be able to come. If we had more time to prepare, if we had more means, probably thousands of people would come.
And finally, and I have to wrap it up because I want to go back to one of our reporters. When you passed by his coffin today, what went through your mind?
Well, before me, as I stood in line, a few people in front of me from our group, who were former officers in the army, they stood in silence and salute, and that gave me a sense of honor, a sense of, how should I say, I was so touched to be able to pay respect to a man that fought for the country, for what we believe is right, and also a man who helped us, who helped our community so much in so many ways.
Well, you talked about the legacy. Derek, thank you so much.
Thank you.
He said, when a tiger dies, it leaves its hide. When a human dies, it leaves its legacy. And I think those are words that maybe we can all live by. Let's continue our coverage and go back to Bianca Bono.
Hey, Mark. Yeah, we're continuing to speak to people who are dedicating so much time to wait in line to walk into the rotunda to say goodbye to Senator McCain. One of the many people is Armando. He's lived here in Arizona for 27 years. He has one of the ice-cold waters being handed out by some volunteers. Armando, thanks for chatting with us.
Sure.
Why did you decide to come out here today?
Well, Senator McCain was such a tremendous leader and even a greater human being. I'm a registered Democrat, but I voted for Senator McCain on a number of occasions just because he always seemed to vote for the right thing rather than to take the party line. And I was always impressed with that. And he was just a genuine human being that embraced anybody and everybody, regardless of your status in the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that was said this morning inside the private ceremony in the rotunda that really stuck with me, I believe it was Senator Kyle that said it. It was John McCain believed in America. And it's just so true. It's so simple, but it's so true. And I understand you had the chance to meet him, like so many people. What was that experience like?
Well, I went to a couple of his fundraisers, and the very first fundraiser I went to, I went, we wrote him a check, and the first thing he did when he was introduced to me was he turned to the photographer and he said, "Would you please take our picture?" I mean, I'm nobody, and he had the insight and the human attitude towards including me in his photographic circle, and I was so impressed with that. And it was just one of the gestures that I found was very human on his part, and I'm sure people have their own stories about his degree of human behavior and how he distinguished himself not only in the Senate but also as a human being.
In that moment, that's so genuine. You can't teach that. He was just such a genuine person. You got what you got. And him including you in that picture, that was probably him just saying, "Hey, come on in." You know, he was so approachable, and so many people have so many similar stories like you.
Yeah, no question about it.
And so you're obviously going to go inside the rotunda. I would imagine it'll be very solemn inside. You know, what do you expect that moment to be like?
I just want to provide my thanks, my appreciation, and my love for him as a human being and his service. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Mark, we'll send it back up to you.
Pleasure.
All right, Bianca, some great words there, and we have so many of these stories to tell today. I do want to mention to you, and we're going to be back on the air starting at 4 o'clock with continuing coverage here at the state capitol as people come to pay their respects. But I do want to warn you, it is and if you're from here, I don't need to tell you this, but it is a hot, blazingly hot Arizona day. If you come down here, if you want to pay your respects, plan on waiting in line. Please bring water. They are selling it here at some food trucks, but you can bring your own. We want you to stay safe and hydrated while you're in line. And then the other thing is, parking is a nightmare down here. The best way to come here to pay your respects, they're asking you to go to the Arizona State Fairgrounds over on 19th Avenue and McDowell Park, and then there's shuttle service here, so you don't have to fight and hunt for a parking space. Again, we will continue our coverage as the late Senator John McCain is honored here in Arizona before his body tomorrow afternoon makes its way to Washington for its final resting place, first at the U.S. Capitol in the rotunda there, and then on to Annapolis to the U.S. Navy Cemetery. For all of us at 12 News, our condolences go out to the McCain family, and we will certainly see you back here as we continue our coverage coming up at 4 o'clock, but for now we'll toss it back to Tram and Joe.
All right, Mark, thank you so much for that. You know, it's so interesting to hear from so many walks of life, from so many different communities, not just from Arizona, but also from California, from the Vietnam veterans, from the Democrats. It just goes to show that this was a man who reached across all platforms, who reached across party lines, and somebody who was just so revered, so loved, a man of conviction and integrity, authenticity, someone who faithfully dedicated 60 years of service to the country that he loves so much.
Yeah, they're coming from out of state for this.
And
really incredible.
I have to say, the man that Mark Curtis interviewed, Derek, he comes from a place that I'm very familiar with, Little Saigon. It is the biggest Vietnamese community outside of Vietnam in the U.S. I actually went there every single weekend growing up, and I can tell you, he echoes the same sentiment that the people here in Arizona, the Vietnamese community here, have as well, that this politician did more for the Vietnamese than any other politician. Yeah. He will go down as one of the greatest senators of all time, and he just did so much for the community, and they are so saddened, like so many other people, over his loss. So just to see people come from across state lines to pay their respects, it's just chilling.
You know, yeah, we think of Senator McCain as a voice for Vietnam veterans, but he embraced the Vietnamese community. The people from Vietnam made so many trips back there. He helped mend ties over the years.
Yes, quite the ambassador. Despite being a prisoner of war for 5.5 years of being tortured, yet he still refused to leave even when the communists allowed him to go. Sure. He put others before him. So again, just a man of great service, and he will be so, so deeply missed.
Yeah. Look, if you can't make it out this evening, and it is hot out there and there are long lines, so if you're planning on staying home, 4 o'clock we'll begin more coverage on through 5 and 6, and of course 10 o'clock as we remember Senator John McCain. All right, we're going to go back to Days of Our Lives, which is in progress, and we do want to let you know that you can catch the full episode of today's Days of Our Lives. You can set the TiVo. It is on early tomorrow morning at 2 a.m. And we'll be back at 4.
You know what's funny is I don't just remember the big stuff. I remember so many small things. Like, I remember the name of this kid I had a crush on in 2nd grade. I felt really weird about it. I remember being a pirate for Halloween 3